heavyweight champion, welcome, Danny Battens.
Number one. You win.
Hey guys, I'm Sai and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 30 and we are talking UFC 251 from last night. This show is available live on Facebook, YouTube and Periscope and Twitter. And of course you can find all our different shows on Ace Podcast Nation, home to many a series with top guests, expert analysis and much more. You can follow us on social media. All the links are in the description. And of course the YouTube channel, if you could give us a little subscribe, is youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. And again, everything's in the description below. And joining me today, because Mr Danny Batten is not with us. He's out in Dubai for the UFC Fight Island week with the Modestas. So we have two special guests instead of the usual one. So first of all, I got pro MMA fighter, Mr. Richard Mearns, back again. How are you, sir?
Guys. I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
All right, mate. You're
Yeah,
back for more, mate. Back for more,
Yeah.
you are. And I'm also thrilled to welcome back to the channel, but not the show because he's never been on this show before, is one of the best MMA journalists and interviewers in the world, in my opinion. Currently working at MMAnews.com, Canada's own, Mr. James Lynch. How are you, my friend?
Doing well, guys. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's good to have you back. Of course, you came on the channel way back, I think it was something like episode 20, and I think we're on about episode 229 this is, so it feels like another lifetime ago. So, James, you've recently kind of changed jobs and changed what you're doing as such, but whilst keeping it the same. You were with The Score in Canada, which is I believe that's a TV channel overall, isn't it?
It used to be a TV channel. It's it's like a sports app. They're sort of known for that. They're like, I think, the second largest sports app in North America behind ESPN. They're like a digital media company now.
Okay, got you. And so you're working with MMAnews.com and a lot of other places, judging by your social media.
Yes, yeah, we'd be here for a while if I had to list off everywhere I work. But yeah, I'm going back to doing what I was doing before, which is being a full-time freelancer. So you'll see my interviews on a variety of different outlets. I'll still be doing my podcast, still be doing my Q&As, things like that. But yeah, now I've just got a bunch of different homes, but still doing the same work. Didn't skip a beat when the Score decided to go in a different direction with their MMA coverage. It's all good.
Cool. Okay, so UFC 251 last night. We'll talk about that in just a second. Of course, at the end of the show, we will also I'm going to ask you guys about some of the UK fighters over the next couple of weeks or the next week or so. And well, if there's any questions from people, we'll answer them as well. But Richard, overall thoughts of the show? What did you think?
Yeah, it was a good show. I was massively looking forward to this one because a few of my favorite fighters were on it. Huge fan of Rose Namajunas. I was so excited to see her back in because I know she took a little break from the sport. She's the type of fighter that really knows what's up with her headspace, and I think that was necessary, and she looked great on the night. George Masvidal, big fan favourite. Last three fights have just been explosive, so when he was on the card, late notice, I was thinking, wow, could see something else spectacular again. Max Holloway and Volkanovski, I'm a great fan of both of them, particularly Max Holloway. I think he's one of the greatest featherweight, is the greatest featherweight of all time, actually, I'd say. So yeah, I was really looking forward to this card.
Yeah, I think Holloway certainly got a shout for the greatest featherweight of all time. I saw an interesting conversation on Twitter actually earlier where, as Twitter people do, they start arguing with each other over random stuff. But there's an argument to be made, I think, that Aldo kind of sort of before 2015 is probably right up there. He dominated various places, and obviously the last couple of years things haven't gone as smoothly for him. James, what were your... Go on, sorry, go on.
I think it's hard for any champion once they're dethroned. It's a hard game from that point, and they might need to start looking to exit or maybe take a layoff. If you look at GSP, for example, when he was looking not so dominant, so like the early GSP was George Rush St. Pierre because he was explosive. And then when they become champions, it's more like methodical ways of getting the job done. And when a champion's dethroned, they're still like number one contenders. So at that point, every fight is just as dangerous as a championship fight. And it's hard going because you're going to be fighting the best in the world. And you string together 2 losses and people start to say, maybe Aldo's lost it. He's had 2 back-to-back losses. But no, these are all the number one title contenders. But without that lure of being the champion, it's a hard game.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing to that is the way he lost his title to McGregor. And it was quite personal in the build-up. And I think probably psychologically that's going to have an effect on any fighter in the aftermath. James, where do you stand on Holloway as the greatest featherweight of all time, and also like your overall thoughts of the show?
Always an outstanding featherweight fighter. He had a great body of work of him finishing Aldo twice in the division, but greatest of all time, to me, we got to see a little bit more, in terms of what he was able to do at featherweight, because, Aldo had the title for how many years? It was like 7 years he was the champion, like if you include the WEC as well. Holloway's going to go down as one of the all-time greats, but I think to say that he's the greatest featherweight of all time is kind of tough just because we haven't seen him defend his title that much. So I think that's sort of what I like basing it on if we're going to have that sort of conversation. And in terms of Aldo, because you guys were talking about it there, it is so hard to compete at a high level. I know Aldo's not that old, but it kind of reminds me a bit of Fedor Emelianenko. I mean, he was a guy that was considered the best heavyweight fighter of all time for years. He fought the best of the best when he was in Pride, when Pride had the best heavyweights. And now people kind of brush that off because of the streak he had after that in Strikeforce, and obviously losing a bit in Bellator as well. But we can't ignore that body of work. I mean, Aldo, what he did in the featherweight division, no matter what he does going forward, even him losing last night, it doesn't change anything about the body of work he did as featherweight champion. So I think that's something we can't ignore. I don't know what's next for him after this point. He tried to make history last night and being a double champion, right? Having won in featherweight, the featherweight title and the bantamweight title. But you got to look at who he's fighting as well, too. He's not fighting any easy opponents. I don't know anyone who's had a tougher run over the last 2 years in terms of opponents. And he had some wins in there, too. He knocked out Jeremy Stevens. He finished, or he went the distance and beat Frankie Edgar at UFC 200. So I think in terms of Aldo and his placement and stuff, you can't take away what he did at featherweight. But it's just unfortunate now that he's fighting guys that are just, at a higher level at this point. Yeah,
and I was surprised to find out that Aldo's not even 35 yet. I couldn't believe that, just because of the amount of time he's been around. So I was really surprised by that. And also, if you look at the featherweight division as a whole, and the bantamweight division, actually, they are insane in terms of quality. Because me and Danny were looking at the bantamweight division on last week's show, and you've got guys like Jack Shaw ranked down at number 50, and really, like we were saying, we wouldn't mind seeing him face someone like an Aldo or someone really high up and see how he gets on, because he's so highly thought of. And then he's ranked 50. There's so many names in there, and the featherweight division is, just the same. There's just so much quality in there. It's very difficult to get to the top and then stay there. James, what did you think overall of the show?
I thought it was a pretty good card overall. I mean, there was a few things that obviously took away some of the thunder. A couple controversial decisions, especially on the undercard. I thought that flyweight fight between Pavia and Zumagulov should have went the other way. Same with the Sakalov and Zaleski fight. I thought Zaleski clearly won that fight. I know people will say the Holloway and Volkanovski fight was a robbery. I think you can't use that word if there was a clear winner in different rounds. For example, like I think Holloway won rounds 1 and 2 decisively, no argument there. I thought Volkanovski clearly won 4 and 5. It comes down to round 3, which I think was very close. I don't have an issue with people saying Volkanovski won the fight if you're basing it off that third round, because I think Volkanovski, you could make an argument for him winning that third round, just like you could make an argument for Max Holloway winning the third round. I think either way, 48-47, either way, there's no issue with me there. It's just unfortunate because of the sort of the implications of that, because now Max has lost twice to Volkanovski, according to the record. And now, where does he go from here? Does he stick around at featherweight? It's probably going to be a while until he gets another title shot. Does he go up to 155 again? I personally think that's a better move for him. There's bigger matchups for him at 155. But I think overall this card, did quite well. Not one of the best ever, but in the main event, I mean, just the style matchup going into it. I mean, we sort of were romanticizing about Masvidal, potentially pulling off this huge upset. And I think most people knew that wasn't going to happen, especially with the optics of him coming in on short notice, facing a guy who's a great wrestler. I just think in general, that main event, maybe not the most entertaining main event we've seen. So I think overall it was a good card, but not like an amazing or great card, so to speak.
Yeah, I think on paper it looked like it could be a absolutely sensational card, and then in reality, which so often happens because it's the fight game, it was good. It wasn't great in my opinion, but it was very enjoyable. I was at no point was I kind of looking at my watch or scrolling through my phone while I was watching it, which in 2020 that's almost how I gauge whether things are keeping my attention, is whether I look down at my phone to check Twitter or Facebook or something. Sad as it may be. So as usual, we tend to stick mainly to the main card as we go through stuff. But there's a couple of things that I do want to mention from the prelims. So firstly, we have to mention Volkan Ozdemir. He got knocked out, and James, I'm going to leave the pronunciation of his opponent to you because I butcher these poor people's names. But yeah. Tell me your thoughts, James, just on that fight. And Ozdemir, where does he go from here?
Well, my pronunciation's not much better. I only realized after watching the broadcast that I've been saying Yuri Prohaska's last name wrong the entire week. I was saying Yuri Prohaska or something. I forget. Either way, the guy from Ryzen. Let's stick it at that. Yeah. The light heavyweight who came over from Ryzen. I was really impressed. So a couple things about this. Number one, Prohaska was a guy that was finishing a lot of his opponents, but you look at the level of competition, nowhere close to Volkan Ozdemir, in my opinion. He's fighting guys like CB Holloway and Maldonado, but those are guys that are kind of past their prime. King Mo, guys like that. So there was really a question of, was he that skilled, or was it just a case of him fighting easier competition? Well, he certainly answered that, and he was showboating a bit early, and I'll be honest, I was a little bit worried about that. I was like, man, is this guy really, does he know what he's doing here? Because this is Volkan Ozdemir, a guy who's pretty tough to fight no matter what. I mean, Daniel Cormier couldn't finish this guy until the second round. It's not like he's an easy fight. So, but what happened, of course, second round, overhand right, knocks out Volkan Ozdemir. Such an impressive win for a number of different reasons. Number one, they need some new blood in that 205-pound division. They've been struggling to find new contenders. Everyone thought it was going to be Johnny Walker, and then Corey Anderson got in the way and halted that hype train. Also, Volkan Ozdemir, I should say, he's a guy that, has kind of had an up-and-down career. Like, he had the title shot. He has some good wins. Heading into this one, he had a 2-fight win streak. But, I think at this point, he's kind of, I don't want to say gatekeeper, maybe he's a little bit further than that, but I think it was still a formidable opponent and good matchmaking here by the UFC, because they really wanted to see the ceiling of Yuri in that division. And for him to go out there and knock him out, because I'm just looking here, this is only the second knockout loss of Volkan Ozdemir's career. So that's a pretty impressive stat, just considering how many guys Ozdemir has fought. Like, we're talking guys like, Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes, Daniel Cormier, Jimmy Manua, like these are guys that have knockout power. So the fact that Prohaska joins sort of a small list of him and Cormier is quite impressive in itself. And, I saw a lot of people last night making the comparison of Prohaska to Johnny Walker. I don't see that same comparison. A lot of people are trying to discredit the win, saying that people are going to get too high on him. Ozdemir's a good opponent. He was ranked number 7th last night. That was a bigger win than any of Johnny Walker's in the UFC. So we got to give him some credit for that. I agree, though. Don't push this guy. Don't say he's going to fight John Jones and has a chance. Let's see him build up in the division. Let's build him up slowly and see how he goes. But still, this was the best case scenario for the light heavyweight division last night.
Yeah, I think so. I think if Ozdemir wins, we're just stuck in the same vicious circle that we've been in for a while, shall we say. I thought he was very impressive, and it was one hell of a knockout. Richard, I nearly called you Tom then, mate. I apologise.
That's how I get it all the time. No worries.
Yeah, what did you think of it?
This was interesting. Is it Prohaska? Is that
Prohaska? I believe the C's silent or something. That's what I noticed on the broadcast anyway, so I could be wrong. But
it's interesting. Where's he from?
Czech Republic.
Czech Republic.
I'd never seen him fight before, so then I quickly looked him up, and he's like a bit of a risen star boy there. But I was watching the fight thinking he's going to get knocked out because he's got baiting him with his chin, like, come on, hit me type thing. And you see a lot of fighters do that, like Conor McGregor's most notable for it, but he doesn't take shots. Do you know what I mean? Like, he'll hands behind the back, it's to display his confidence, really. So Prohaska was trying to display like his superior confidence, which is kind of part of the psychological game plan. But he was getting caught. And I was just like, he's leaving his chin out there to say, you can't get me, but was getting tagged. And I thought, it really only takes one of those. So the guy has a great chin. He proved it. But I was watching the fight, and I was like, wow, he's got 27 wins. He can't have won all his other 27 fights like that, because the accumulation of damage over the years, your chin does not, it damages the nervous system. And I was just quite intrigued to see him fight like that. I thought it was too risky, and he wasn't slick enough to avoid the shots, but it worked. So yeah, I'm excited to see more of him. I wonder if he were, maybe it was his UFC debut, so he wanted to be extra spectacular and really make a statement by being quite ballsy, but it was a risky game he was playing, and he pulled it off. But I don't think he was in ultimate control. When you watch Conor McGregor do that kind of showboating, he knows he's in ultimate control of the range, the tempo of the fight, everything like that. It was risky. Good fight.
Yeah, for sure. It was 100% risky, and I think also it was. I think you're right. I think he wanted to make, he wanted to make an impact. He wanted to really show that he was the new guy on the scene, and he obviously did that with the finish. But it's a risk, isn't it? Particularly against a guy like Ozdemir, who can, knock you out with one punch. The other thing I wanted to mention about the prelims was, obviously, predominantly our viewers and listeners, particularly our listeners, are UK based, so we like to put as much focus on the UK fighters as we can. And there was a young man called Davy Grant, I think was it Davy Grant? Yeah, Davy Grant, yes. Who fought on the prelims. I think it was the first fight of the night, actually, and he picked up a very impressive win in the end. James, what did you make of this one, mate?
Great fight, absolutely great fight, and best case scenario for Davy Grant at this point, because even though he's coming in to this fight off a win, to get a finish like that over a guy in Martin Day, who his last knockout loss was back in March of 2017, very impressive. And I actually thought Martin Day was in control of this fight, so the fact that he went out there and was able to finish it later in the match just shows how talented he is. Davy Grant's had a rough go. I mean, we forget he was a finalist on season 18 of The Ultimate Fighter when he lost to Chris Holdsworth. That was back in 2013. He's only fought 5 times since then. I know he had injuries, he had some other issues as far as him fighting as much, and he's kind of been a bit of an afterthought in the bantamweight division. But for him to go out there, compete on this mega card, and get a knockout like that to kick off the card, I think really reminded people how talented he is. And it was such a big win for him, and just a big win as well for the UK market as they continue to try and bring up new talent and try and get people that they can fill these cards with eventually once this COVID stuff sort of dies down a little bit. But that he's a guy that I know they're going to use going forward. So I think it was a really big win for him. For Martin Day, unfortunately, that's 2 straight losses for him. Like I mentioned, first knockout loss since 2017. So I have a feeling they'll keep him around. He's a Hawaiian guy. He's obviously very exciting to watch, very exciting to watch compete and everything. So I think they'll give him maybe one more. But this was a great fight and just really good matchmaking on the UFC's part, because I kind of think what they were doing here was they were like, what is the ceiling on Davy Grant? Where can he go in this division? We're gonna give him a guy in Martin Day who's not going to give you any inches. He's a Hawaiian. He will get in your face. He will try and knock you out. So you can't get away with anything when you're fighting a Martin Day. And Davy Grant, like I said, to be able to go out there and get a knockout over him, huge win for him and huge win for the UK market as well too.
Yeah, it was a big test for Grant, I thought, to fight someone like Day. He must have had those nerves because it's such a big card. Everyone's watching. There's not really any other combat sports or even sports in general on at the moment outside of soccer. So I mean, he had to put on a good performance, whether he took it to a decision or he finished the fight. And I thought he did that. Richard, I know you didn't catch all of this one. But what did you make of the bit you saw?
Yeah, it was good. First time I'd actually seen Davy Grant fight, and it seemed very like karate style, sort of how he slides in and slides out, if you know what I mean. You get to see some fighters that just march forward into the sort of fire, but he sort of slides in, slides out, throws small combinations, and then goes out again. And then, so I found that interesting. The leg kicks were doing brilliantly for him. But with the whole sliding in and sliding out, he got caught really hard in round 1. He literally jumped in to an overhand, and Martin Day timed it perfectly, but then the guy recovered. Excellent job there. And a nice takedown from, I think it was round 1. It was like a out of range takedown, and then they hit the fence, and then he gets the trip off there. It was really good performance and excellent knockout.
Yes, indeed, he couldn't have done any more. So it'd be interesting where he goes next. I know pre-COVID they had a UFC London card ready and booked, and there's so much there is so much UK talent out there in the UFC already, and also there's a big pool kind of just underneath the UFC at the Richard, as you know, in Cage Warriors there's some quite big names just waiting to be signed. So I would expect a UFC London card sooner rather than later. Do you think, James?
Yeah, we'll see. It's really going to depend on COVID and everything that's sort of happening there. But yeah, I mean, that's a huge market for them, right? So I'd imagine like they're going to want to come, like that's the other thing too. Like I think once all this COVID stuff's over, you're going to see them go back to their bigger markets. Like up here in Canada, we haven't had a card since I think the Vancouver card last year. So I know they're going to come back to Canada at some point. They signed another Canadian actually last week. I don't know if you guys saw. Malcolm Gordon's going to be stepping in to fight. He's a top flyweight fighter. So they're obviously serious about coming back to Canada at some point too. So just keep your eyes out for that once all this stuff hopefully dies down in the near future.
Yeah, it seems to be slowly working towards normality. I don't know what it's like over in Canada, James, but the UK is slowly starting to get back to normal. The new normal, I suppose, is what you would say.
We're actually doing okay over here. I can just quickly interject just to give you guys a little update. So it really depends on what province you're in. Like in Ontario, where Toronto is, it's still pretty bad as far as I know with the cases. Same thing with Quebec as well. But out here where I live in British Columbia, in Vancouver, it's actually been very good. We actually had phase 3, I think, like almost a month ago now. So we were able to go back to the gym and everything. And the cases have been really low, as have been the death tolls and everything. So we're really lucky being here because it seems like everyone's sort of been respecting, the masks and the social distancing and all that. So it just depends where you go in Canada, but still no travel outside of Canada. Like I live 5 minutes away from the US border. I can't go there right now because it's only essential like work and things like that.
Okay, so yeah, like Britain being Britain of opening the pubs but not the gyms, which is still bizarre to me, but there
Priorities,
we go.
Right? Isn't
it? open the pubs but don't open the leisure centres and the gyms and the health clubs yet. But it is what it is. It is moving, is what I will say. It's moving towards normality, and I hope, hopefully we can get back. And I would think that the UFC will be putting on some massive cards down the road because pretty much every fighter wants to fight at the moment, outside of maybe one or two. Okay, so let's move on to the main card. We started off with the 2 women's fights. Now, we've been 2020 for all the bad that we've had in a whole variety of forms in 2020. Women's MMA has not been bad. We've been treated to some very, very special fights throughout the year. It's been incredible. And I don't think we were disappointed this evening either. So first of all, we had Amanda Ribas versus Paige Van Zandt in a strawweight bout. Richard, what did you make of this one? It wasn't too long, only 2 minutes 21.
It wasn't sort of too much to discuss with this. So Amanda, I think, was the obvious favourite. She's on, she's 10-1, I believe her record now stands at, or 11-1. But it was really good. So she got like an early sort of scarf hold, tripped her down against the fence from there, and she was riding it was like a side control position, but quite high up on the chest. So at that point, I was thinking, Paige could quite easily sneak round the back and get the hooks in. And it did look like Paige was going to get the back take. But then Amanda managed just to hop over the back take attempt and then go for the armbar attack. So at first she was sort of stacked underneath, and then she turns on the shoulder and goes to belly down armbar. And that's all she wrote. I know that Paige Van Zandt had a lot of surgeries on her arm, so I don't know if it was the arm that was being attacked, but she was quick to tap, and she tried to roll out of it, and I think Amanda had the foot on the back of the head, stopping Paige from escaping. So yeah, it was really technical. Really
it was very, very, very good. What's next for Paige Van Zandt, James, do you think, as well as what your thoughts were on the fight?
Well, heading into the fight, I think it was pretty obvious. By the way, this was a flyweight fight, not strawweight.
So,
So yeah, no worries.
It's,
no. But Ribas has fought pretty much at strawweight. I think it was at flyweight because I don't think Paige could make 115. I think that's from what I was hearing was the issue. So a lot of people, don't worry, I had a lot of people last night being like, "Wow, Amanda Ribas is going to be interesting for flyweight," but it's like, no, she's a strawweight. She's probably going to go back down to strawweight after this. But anyways, the optics of this fight are this: the UFC knew exactly what they were doing with this fight. They don't want Paige Van Zandt in the UFC anymore. I think they know they can't get a lot out of her, marketing wise, and she's also been very vocal about fighter pay, saying that she made more on Dancing with the Stars than she has her entire UFC career. So that's why they gave her Amanda Ribas, who basically is going to be the future of the strawweight division, in my opinion. Very talented fighter. She was the biggest betting favorite on the card last night, so it was pretty obvious what the UFC was doing here. They weren't going to re-sign Van Zandt. They were going to, be like, all right, well, how good are you? We're going to give you our best prospect. And so obviously Paige went out there, got submitted in the first round. Not entirely surprising. I was actually surprised that Ribas was able to finish her that quickly. I thought Van Zandt, with it being a flyweight, which I think is a better weight class for her, I thought she would have been able to hang on a little bit more, maybe go the distance. But Ribas showing how talented she is. Paige is not going to be back with the UFC. I'd be very surprised if she came back. I think Bellator is most likely. Her husband, Austin Vanderford, is a middleweight fighter with them. They'll do a better job of marketing her. They're sort of more on the entertainment side of things anyways. You just look at some of the signings they've had with pro wrestler Jake Hager. They brought in Dylan Dennis. Like, they're more about the marketing side of things, and they can get away with it a little bit more too, because it's not like, outside of some of their top fighters, they can make some fun matchups there too. And flyweight's a division as well that they're really still trying to build up on. They have that really great champion, Alima Lam McFarland. So I think Paige going over there would make a lot of sense. So yeah, I mean, best case scenario for the UFC happened last night with the Ribas getting a win over a notable name in Paige Van Zandt. They're going to continue to build her up. And with Paige herself, I mean, I think even off a loss, Bellator would be interested because they need more names for that flyweight division. That's sort of what I think about everything.
Yeah, I think I saw a lot of people, and our mutual friend James Sean Ross Sapp, saying that they wouldn't be surprised to see Paige Van Zandt make a move to WWE. She's kind of got that athletic look, and they would be interested. They'd certainly pay her a lot more than what the UFC probably have been over the last year or so, or a couple of years. So, that's an option for her. If she wants to keep fighting, though, like you say, Bellator would be a very good shout. Okay, and then next up we had, of course, in my opinion, was the fight of the night. I really, really enjoyed this. It was number 1 ranked Jessica Andrade versus number 2 ranked Rose Namajunas. This was very good and very enjoyable. And Rose Namajunas was back to her best, I thought. So first round, Richard, what did you make of this? And then who did you give it to as well?
Yeah, this was a brilliant fight. I'm really excited to see Rose back. I think she was, when she got the belt, I think she was struggling with fame a little bit. And which is, she didn't seem too bothered about losing the belt, or I don't know, I listened to her on a few podcasts, and I think she was struggling with the fame and the pressure of being champion, but she seems to have got her head right. And the first round of this fight was actually, I think, the closest of the few. And it was hard. It's hard to actually score it, I find. They're more sort of filling each other out. So I struggled to actually pick a winner for this round. But I'm going to go with Rose.
Yeah, I gave it to Rose marginally.
They're like opposite fighters, if you know what I mean. So the fight takes place on the feet, and Rose has sort of got more of the long range boxing, like sharp jabs, long cross, and then Jessica comes in with sort of the bowler style, lots of head movement. She was, I think, overcooking the head movement in round 1. Maybe that's just she's a bit shy. Usually, but when you fight, it's like the first point of contact is required before the nerves sort of start to disappear. But she was really moving the head a hell of a lot. Yeah. But yeah, I'll give that first round to Rose.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. In my notes, I had for the first round, I had that I thought Rose's footwork was excellent. And I thought that the first round I had that Jessica's head movement was it was good, but it was quite wayward, quite maybe, like you said, you used the perfect term actually, overcooked it a little bit. But I thought like after that first round, I thought she got her head movement right, and she became a lot harder for Rose to get clean shots off. James, what did you think of that first round, and who did you give it to?
I gave it to Rose as well. I thought she did a little bit more in that round in terms of the activity, but it was a very close one. I think overall this fight should have been a unanimous decision for Rose. I don't know how you would score that for Andrade. It was, like I said, it was close, but I just didn't think there was, like when it went there, I was pretty confident Rose was going to get the win. And again, we got to look at the optics of this. Rose lost that fight pretty brutally last time, right? Like I think you could argue in the last fight, she won the first round. She got taken down, but she was able to get up. Second round, she got taken down again, but this time she got slammed, and then the fight ended. And it was just such a brutal knockout in a fight that she was winning. So to come back from that, I know she was the betting favorite in this fight, but to come back from that, the way she lost, having known that Andrade had already beat her, I mean, that's got to weigh on a fighter heading into a rematch like that. And with Rose, again, if she would have lost this, I mean, that would have really set her back a lot. So for her to go out there and put on the type of performance she did, and it wasn't easy. I mean, we saw the post-fight interview. She had that big mouse over her eye because Andrade can hit. I mean, I don't know many women's fighters that can knock out like a Karolina Kowalkiewicz in the very first round like Andrade has. So, kudos to Rose. She was able to make adjustments. She was able to use her range and outstrike Andrade and really put a stamp on the strawweight division, because I think she's going to fight Zhang Weili next for the title.
Yeah, and I will really look forward to that fight. Wow.
How do you think she gets on with Zhang Weili?
That's what's so interesting.
Do you have a prediction for that?
It's tough because obviously Zhang is kind of in some ways similar.
Puncher, right?
Well, I was just going to say she's similar to Andrade in that sense, right? So can Rose use her range? Can she go out there and do it? If she has a similar performance like she had against Andrade, I think there's a chance she could do it.
Yeah.
But it's really tough with Zhang Weili because she just looks so good in those last two fights. I mean, to go out there and absolutely dismantle Jessica Andrade to win the title, that was so impressive. And then to do the damage she did to Joanna Jędrzejczyk, like no one's done that to Jędrzejczyk in her career. Like Rose knocked her out, but to do that accumulation of damage was just crazy. So maybe my early picks Rose, I don't know, but again, you have to wonder, how this is going to sort of pan out. Another interesting fact about this fight too, they both have the same manager, so I'm pretty positive this fight's going to happen. They're both rep by Sucker Punch, so I expect that fight to take place maybe this year or maybe early next year.
Who have you got, Richard, for that fight?
That's really, really difficult because Zhang Weili, I think, is better than Amanda, like a harder fight. Not Amanda. But I think if Rose performs like she did last night and can keep at range, because she's a really long girl, then she can do it. So I'm sort of 50-50, but I'm gonna say Rose. She's got time to make adjustments to her game, and it'd be a hell of a fight.
It's a big shout, that is. Zhang Weili just impressed me so much in her last fight. It was just, because me and Danny spent about 40 minutes just talking about that fight. It was just so enjoyable and it was just so impressive. I just really thought it was something special to behold from a performance point of view and just an all-round spectacle. I just thought it was special. So I find it very difficult to imagine her then losing to Rose, but then we've seen Rose put on some real special performances in the past. She's more than capable, and I really feel like this break did her the world of good because she looked so refreshed in this fight. Round 2, Richard, where how did you see that, and who did you give it to?
I gave that to Rose because she was more in control of the range the fight was fought at. So I think it was a pretty close fight throughout. But round 2, more decisive. I'm going to go with Rose.
For sure. James, what about you?
Yeah, I went with Rose as well. I think just, again, the activity was a little bit more, you got to look at sort of, who was the aggressor as well. I think Rose did a great job of that. So I gave her the nod in that round as well.
Yeah, it was very impressive. I gave that second round to Rose, and then the final round I gave to Andrade. I felt like she really pushed out to try and get a finish in that final round. James, how did you see, or what were the parts which you picked out from that third round?
Third round, yeah, it was a little bit closer. I mean, Rose took some damage. You visibly saw her face get a little bit bloodied up. I wouldn't have an issue if you wanted to give that round to Andrade. I thought that she did quite well in that round. But again, like I think overall, Rose did win that fight. If you look at the overall 3 rounds, I think Rose was a little bit busier. Did a really good job of sort of avoiding the power of Andrade as well. I mean, not in that third round. She certainly got clipped a few times, but in general, I thought that Rose did enough to get her hand raised. And again, it was a close round. Like none of these rounds were like decisive. They were very close, and I think that's the sign of a good fight, and that's why everyone sort of enjoyed it last night.
Yes, it was very enjoyable. And that third round for you, Richard, any points that you wanted to add?
I'm going to give that round to Jessica Andrade. I just think she sort of stood out more in the round. She got a nice hip toss, and there's a few other significant moments. So there's a good hip throw, and I think it was just the signs of damage on Rose's face was really starting to show. So ultimately, I scored the fight rounds 1 and 2 to Rose, round 3 to Jessica.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so it was Rose Namajunas defeated Jessica Andrade by split decision. It was 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. I think the right decision. I don't think there was any qualms with that one, James.
No. I mean, I think that I think again that Rose clearly won the fight because it was a split decision, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it should have just been a unanimous for Rose. Like I said, you could have given that last round to Andrade, but I mean, the first round was a little bit closer, but I don't know. I thought Rose clearly won.
Yeah, me too. I did think it was a unanimous decision, but at least the main thing is that it was the right decision, and we're not talking about like some sort of robbery, as is the term going around social media today. And next up was the UFC Bantamweight Championship. Another impressive performance by Petr Yan, who ranked number 3, but facing Jose Aldo, ranked number 6. Take me through this first round, Richard.
Yeah, it was a good round. I give the round to Petr Yan. Aldo was doing really good with the leg kicks. And then Yan landed some big overhands, and then when it went to the ground, I forget how they went to ground. I'm trying to think who instigated the takedown. I can't quite remember, but Yan's ground and pound was really, really effective. So he's postured right up and he's striking down, and then he catches Aldo right on one of the ribs. And at that point, if there was more time in the round, I think Yan could have stopped Aldo, because he stopped responding. He just, when he hurt his ribs, he just covered up just to stay safe. So, it's a very dominant round for Petr Yan. Yeah,
those body shots in particular seemed to give him a spot of bother. So, what did you have for the first round, James?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Richard said. I mean, Jan was very close to winning that fight in the very first round, because you could see Aldo was hurt, and it was just like, maybe if there was like 10 more seconds, the referee might have stepped in and stopped that. But that was totally Jan's round. Looked great in the early going. And one of the things I wanted to point out, like heading into this fight, the big question was, again, kind of like one of the fights we talked about earlier with Prohaska, is how good is Petr Yan? Because his biggest win heading into this fight was Jimmy Rivera, right? So he hadn't fought anyone to the caliber of Aldo, and while Aldo, like, he was coming on a bit of a losing streak, right? Like, he had, like, I think he was 2-4 in his last 6 or something. Look at who he's fighting, like world champions, guys like Volkanovski and Holloway, and even Marlon Moraes. Like, how many fighters go the distance with Marlon Moraes? Like, barely anyone. So that was the question heading in there. Is Jan that good? Is he that talented? Or is it a case of him just fighting easier competition? Well, that first round certainly set the pace for the fight, where it's like, Jan is pretty damn good, isn't he? Like, he was landing, he was getting the shots in, and like I said, almost finished Aldo. You had to give that round to Jan just because he was like this close to finishing it.
Yes. Yeah. Go on, Rich.
Aldo he's not, he's so amazing, and it's, of course, that with his style, he just dominated the featherweight division for like 10 plus years. He was looking unstoppable. But since he fell off, I don't see him doing many things to change his style, to make it less predictable for his opponents. He stayed true to his original form, which got him the belt, made him the long reigning champion. But I think he needs to make some adjustments, and he's sort of he's just not doing them at the moment. So he looks like classic Aldo last night, but classic Aldo is who they're studying. When you're going to fight Jose Aldo, you're going to watch back the tapes, and you're going to think of a strategy based on what you see, and he's not changing his game plan. He's staying the same, and I think this is why these great champions are now beating him. You know, to be able to go 3 rounds with Peter Yan, you know, you're at a world elite level, but he's just not doing that extra bit that's required of like the best in the world. I don't think. Just needs to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think
Staying the same.
I just think, even though we discussed that, you know, he's not quite 35, Aldo, like, I do feel like, particularly with the weight division change, Petr Yan is cementing himself as one of the best in the world over these last few fights. And I thought tonight was, or last night, should I say, I thought it was very important for him to put on a really good performance against Aldo and make sure that there was no slip-ups, nothing, you know. I think it was important for him to be, almost have a professional victory, and if possible be, you know, get a finish. But I thought he was dominant, you know, particularly, I don't know about you guys, but by the finish, I was kind of like, come on, we stop the fight. There's that meme, isn't there, of the Simpsons, where it's kind of like he's already dead. Yeah, and that was why I was kind of thinking of that particular meme because it got a bit uncomfortable towards the end.
But a late stoppage, I think.
Yeah, I thought so. And like for me, I'm all for letting fighters, you know, give them as much chance as possible. But when you're taking unprotected headshots over and over again, you know, knowing what we know and probably what we'll go on to find out about concussions and brain trauma, I'm not sure that that's a good look overall, and particularly for the long-term health of fighters, because the end, you know, he was turtled up, he wasn't defending himself, and he took, I would say, probably 15 to 20 shots to the head without even moving his hands to kind of, you know, to adjust to where the punches were coming. He just had his hands like this. But, you know, I'm not a fighter, I'm not a referee, so maybe I'm wrong there.
No, he wasn't trying to improve his position at all. Just effectively, he could have tapped, but I think a lot of fighters don't ever want to tap.
Yeah, Michael Bisping made a good point about that, actually, because he said, as he was taking those shots, he said, you know, he should be tapping now from the punches, but he won't because of the type of man and fighter that he is. But ultimately, that's what, in my opinion, that's what combat sports referees are supposed to be there.
He wanted the referee to stop it at that point. And
but then should his corner step in? Should they throw a towel in? I know it's not the done thing, and the fighter probably wouldn't be happy about it, but ultimately, doesn't someone need to protect Jose Aldo for himself at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the corner were probably expecting the ref to do it. You know, he did do it eventually, but it was just really to take his time stopping that fight. You know?
Well, and here's the other thing too. Like, I think corners have got to be a little bit more honest about themselves. Like, you remember even on the Andrade fight where I think her corner was telling her she was up 2-0 or something, and it's like, no, you're not. Like there's got to be more emphasis, more of a, you know, sort of a unbiased lens when it comes to fights, because if you're Aldo's corner, you know he wasn't winning that fight heading into the late rounds. Like, so if he's taking this punishment, stop the fight. It's like Glover and Anthony Smith, same thing. Like, Anthony Smith was not winning those rounds. Your corner's got to come in there and say, look, like, enough's enough, right? Like, especially I think when you're down. If it's a close fight, I'd have a little bit more sympathy for the corner if they were willing to let it go on a little bit longer. But in a case where you know you're not going to come back and win, and like when a guy's that fatigued, like how often have we seen like a 5th round comeback? That like never happens, right? So I think they got to look at that as well if you're the corner and do that. And two, the referee. I mean, they both have blame in this as far as letting that go on a little bit too long. But yeah, great performance by Yan. That's the unfortunate part, is Yan had a great performance. And I'm not saying like because we're talking about it here, but I think in general, the talk unfortunately is going to be how late the stoppage was instead of how good Yan looked. I mean, he did his job, right? So
yeah, and I thought he was very impressive, really impressive actually. And what's next for Peter Yan, James, for you?
Sterling,
what would you Sterling?
Yeah, and this is the thing I love about Yan too. Like he didn't say, you know what, I'm going to hold out. We're going to do a super fight with Volkanovski because I want to make a lot of money, right? Like we've seen that with a lot of these champions lately where it's like they want the big money fights. And I get it. Everyone wants to get paid more money. Who doesn't want to get a bigger paycheck? But I like how Jan immediately was like, no, it's Sterling. Like he earned it. He should have probably been in this title fight, right?
Yes,
like
he
gave respect to him. So already I'm a huge fan of Jan in being the title holder here because he recognizes the body work that Sterling's done, and that's going to be a fantastic fight. I'm just so glad he didn't say like, no, you know what? I want to fight Dominic Cruz because he's a bigger name. No, let's stick with the rankings. Let's continue this momentum and let's continue on with this. So I thought that was great on Jan for him to say that.
Yeah, I saw a quote from, I haven't seen the interview, I saw a quote from Dana White afterwards. He was asked about Aljamain Sterling being the next title contender, and he wasn't too committed to it, shall we say. He just doesn't seem to really want to commit to that fight, which is strange because for me, Sterling is the absolute standout for the next title shot. So it doesn't make too much sense to me. Unfortunately, I've got a sneaky, I say unfortunately, but I wonder whether I forgot his name. His name's gone off the tip of my tongue.
Bantamweight?
Yeah, I can't remember his
Cruz?
name. No, the other one.
Cejudo.
No, it's gonna. They'll come to me in a second. Richard, who would you put Sterling in there as well, or would you go for someone else?
I've never seen Sterling fight. When I watch UFC, I'm always sort of mainly focusing on lightweight and featherweight because I watch UFC to learn from them, you know?
Yeah.
So I often don't find time to catch all the cards.
Watch his fight with Corey Sandhagen. That was really impressive. That was his last fight.
Yeah.
If you can go find the footage, because Sandhagen, I think heading into it, had never been finished, and Sterling went out there and finished him in the first round. So really impressive. And the fight before that too. I'm sure most people can attest. That fight he had with Pedro Munoz, amazing fight. That was last year at UFC 238 in Chicago. It was awesome.
Yeah, I'll definitely do some studying on him.
Yeah, he was. You're right, James. That was a superb performance. Next up, we had another cracking fight, and in my opinion, we had the real Max Holloway turned up for this one. The UFC Featherweight Championship. Alexander Volkanovski defended versus the number one ranked Mr. Max Holloway. Richard, how did you see the first round?
First round, I'll give this to Max. So I've just got some notes here. But what I noticed about this fight, so Max has got amazing boxing, and he tends to win most of his fights on the feet with the hands. And we saw like a much greater variety of techniques. So he's throwing a lot of kicks this time. And I think the reason he was throwing a lot of kicks, and then for that reason, Volkanovski wasn't throwing half as many leg kicks as he did the first time. But I think he knows that that's the obvious game plan, so he's tried to switch it up. And then I see that Volkanovski uses the inside leg kick. Most of the time, that's a rangefinder. So he throws the inside leg kick just to sort of see where they're at. It lands. It doesn't do great damage. Max wasn't bothered about them leg kicks landing at all during the fight because an inside leg kick it doesn't do a lot of damage unless the opponent is heavily grounded, but he sort of skips in with it, just skips in, throws it, and when he lands he knows he's in range for a big overhand, which is usually what he's looking for. But I can give that round to Max. I just think much greater variety of strikes being thrown and landing. Volkanovski was landing some good shots as well, but Max is who stands out in my mind for that round.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought it was a good start by Max Holloway. He had some trouble with the kicks in the first fight, and I thought he did a good job of nullifying the damage that they never looked the same threat that they had in the first fight. James, what do you think Holloway did differently to nullify those kicks compared to the first fight?
I just thought overall, like you guys said, he looked like the old Holloway. He was aggressive. He was coming in there. He was really just sort of looking like the Holloway we saw against Aldo, where he just, came forward, threw body shots, threw kicks, did everything he needed to do, and really made sure that Volkanovski could get in on the inside. Like early on, it really looked like Volkanovski was having trouble which was kind of the opposite of the first fight where Volkanovski was able to get in. But in this fight, it's like Holloway was using his range well, and Volkanovski was unable to sort of get in there like he would want. But first round, clearly Max Holloway. When I was watching this, I was like, uh-oh, like this is the old Holloway's back, right? Like it sort of looked like that in the early going. And you could just see, you even saw, I think it was either the first or second round, you saw Volkanovski going to his corner, like shaking his head like, dude, what did I just do? It was crazy.
Yeah, I thought Holloway really pushed forward in this fight a bit more compared to what he did in the first fight also. Johnny Wish in the comments just said Cody Garbrandt, and that's the name I was thinking of, that I think deserves the next bantamweight title shot, but that's who I think the UFC might give it to.
Yes, because they had that confrontation last year. That's a good point. And there's a couple things I'll just mention here quickly. I don't want to divert too much off topic, but if you remember, they had that altercation at UFC 245 when Jan beat Faber. They had some sort of altercation backstage. You guys can Google it. It's the videos there. They got in each other's faces. So I think there was that. And then you notice how that fight with the Sunset was the co-main event of that card, right? That was a little bit weird, wasn't it? Because Garbrandt was coming off a couple losses, so was the Sunset. So why were they there? Like, you could make the argument it's because he was a former champion, but that seemed a bit odd to me, whereas Sterling and Sandhagen were further behind, and that was the more important fight. So I think, I kind of have that theory that maybe they're going to angle for that just because everyone likes a good grudge match. But if you want to ruin Cody Garbrandt's career, you do that fight now. And it's nothing against Garbrandt. I think he did a good job in that win over a Sunset, but why are we rushing him back into another title shot? That's what got him in this mess in the first place, was them giving him the immediate rematch with Dillashaw, then giving him Pedro Munoz, which had zero upside for him whatsoever. Like, Munoz was ranked high, but he's not a name. And Garbrandt went out there and did the worst thing you could do, which is try and outstrike Pedro Munoz when Munoz has got knockout power, and he got knocked out himself. So if I'm the UFC, I'm being very careful about that matchmaking. I think you got to give Garbrandt another sort of fight that he can win, because I don't think he beats Piotr Jan. I don't know if anyone's going to beat Piotr Jan, except maybe Aldo and Sterling.
Garbrandt has looked pretty good in his last couple of fights, but ultimately, like you say, Aljamain Sterling is the guy. We got a question actually, so just we'll finish off with this fight and then we'll go to the question from Alan. Second round, Richard, how did you find that?
Even better round for Max again, so I'm going to give it to Max. This round, he kept doing the same combo a lot throughout the fight, and it's like a uppercut, rear uppercut, lead hook, and he was doing brilliantly with that. And the second time he landed that, he got Volkanovski quite wobbly, but he also got the head kick where he skims him, shin sort of clips the back of the noggin, and it wasn't like a vicious knockdown, but it definitely counts in my books. So he's caught him off balance with that head kick, and if you get a knockdown in a round, it takes a lot to win that back. So Max all the way with this round.
Yeah, I thought this one was definitely a Max Holloway victory. Volkanovski still looked different. Different. He looked dangerous at times. He cracked him with a nice left, sort of. I don't know if I'd even call it a hook, but it was like a loop-in left hand towards the end of the round. James, how did you find the second round? Did you go with Holloway as well?
Yeah, easily Holloway in that one. The head kick, and just again, he really turned it up in that round. And that was the round where I thought, oh man, Holloway's going to run away with this thing. Like, he really looked good in that second round, especially. Just again, Volkanovski had no answers for Holloway, and really put a stamp on that round, like I said, with the kicks and everything else. So clear round 2 for Holloway.
Yeah, that second round reminded me a little bit of the Ortega fight, the early rounds of that fight, yes, where he just looked almost like he was, like you said, he's going to run away with it, and he just looked like the old Holloway. But as any champion will do, Volkanovski came back into it in the third round. Richard, what stood out for you from the third round?
Third round, much closer round. See, I think the two of them, Max and Volkanovski, they're such an equal match, and I do think we need a third fight, because so first fight, Volkanovski wins, and it was clear, it was decisive, but it wasn't dominant, but it was definite win, no doubt about it. And sorry, I just pulled my headphones there. But this round was a bit closer, but I still give it to Max. He was coming with some nice flying knees. The volume of strikes wasn't as high as round 1 and 2, but I feel like he was more in control. So I'm going to give it to Max.
Okay, I gave the third round to Volkanovski. I just felt that he settled down a little bit, and he started to get his jab working, getting just starting to not nullify, to use the same word again, necessarily Holloway's moving forwards, but I felt that he just slowed Holloway down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he
with
went
his
for
own
his
work.
first takedown attempt in the fight,
Yeah.
but he didn't get him down, and I think takedowns, they have to get them down, but I think damage has to be done after the takedown for it to really score.
Okay.
So different strategy, but it's
Okay,
still
James,
close.
what did you think of that third round?
Yeah,
mate?
so this is what decided the fight, in my opinion. Okay, because and I did so last night when the card was going on, I was doing these reaction videos where as soon as the fight was over, I give my quick take on what I thought of the fight and my comments on YouTube. And YouTube, as we know, anyways, is a little bit iffy when it comes to the comments. But this was I'm still this morning getting comments about this. I thought Volkanovski won too, and the reason I did was because yes, he missed the takedown, but he also blocked a couple of those kicks, and he had that counter left in that round. I think a lot of people forget about that. The commentary last night was a little bit iffy for me. I felt they were very pro Holloway.
I thought so.
So if you're just, and I didn't actually have the commentary up that loud. I was sort of just watching it and kind of faintly hearing it in the background. So maybe that influenced, maybe I was just watching it without it. Maybe that didn't give me what I thought it did. But I thought this was the closest round of the fight. And I did think Volkanovski edging. Now, look, if you're going to give this to Max Holloway, no complaints there. But this was what decided the fight for me, because whoever you picked in that round, I think we can all agree would win the fight because, well, I know we're going to talk about the next two rounds, but spoiler alert, I thought Volkanovski won the next two rounds. So I mean, to me, this is what decided the fight was that third round, and I thought this is where the tide changed for Volkanovski, and you could see it as 4th and 5th, he looked a lot better. But look, I have no issues. I'll say this the third time. I have no issues if you want to give Holloway that third round and give him the fight. No issues there. But people saying this is a robbery, come on, okay? Because a robbery to me is where someone clearly lost every round, or at least the majority of the rounds, and that did not happen here. Holloway won 1 and 2, no debate there. You could maybe give him 3, but 4 and 5 were definitely Volkanovski. Go watch Diego Sanchez and Ross Pearson. That was a robbery. This was not a robbery.
So, so I disagree. I gave the third round to Volkanovski. I gave the 4th round to Holloway, and I gave the 5th round to Volkanovski. So I had Holloway winning 48-47. However, the fight was so close that I don't believe that you can, I don't count it as a robbery. I wasn't sat in my seat, oh my god, how could they give the victory to Volkanovski? It was so close, and as they were getting ready to announce it, I was like, well, I could go either way, Richard, what did you have for round 4?
So round 4, I gave this one to Max as well.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm not, I'm mostly pro Max for the whole fight. Round 5, I give to Volkanovski, and because it's only in round 5 that he really started to get more urgent.
Yes.
But I give it to Max. I think he controlled the tempo the fight was fought out, mostly the range the fight was fought at, a greater variety of techniques. The kicks were dangerous. He kept doing this jump switch knee, which was, it didn't land flush, but it was presenting so much more danger throughout the fight. It's an interesting one. It's not a robbery, but I'm convinced Max won. It's kind of like the opposite of the first fight. Do you know what I mean? It's close and competitive every single round, but one person was clearly in control. And when I'm watching it, I'm thinking about who's in control. And I felt like Max was mostly in control for the whole of the fight, except for round 5. But I feel like maybe he was coasting a little bit because he felt like he'd done enough in the first 4 rounds. So yeah, it's close.
Yeah. It's all opinions,
both,
isn't it? And I think...
Yeah, but with both fights, there's no fighter who is clearly better.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So usually, we have a second fight, and then we can be like, okay, so-and-so is obviously the greater fighter, but both fights are just really close, and they're equal, completely equals, these two. Different styles. Great matchup. I'd love to see it again.
Here's the problem for me, is by running this back straight away, they've effectively ruled Holloway out of the title picture because he's lost twice. So I think if it was just this fight, for instance, it was so close, I feel like they could run it back. But because he's lost twice, I don't feel like they can run it back yet. James, do you feel the same about that, or do you?
Yeah,
think...
they're not. I highly doubt they'll do the trilogy, especially with how many contenders are waiting in the wings. You've got the Korean Zombie, you've got Zabit Magomedsharipov, you got Yair Rodriguez, plus you got this featherweight fight coming up on Wednesday with Kattar and Ige. Like the winner of that, if there's an impressive victory there, that could maybe propel them up there. You've got Josh Emmett waiting in the wings as well. Quickly, I want to go back to that fourth round though. The inside leg kicks to me for Volkanovski was the difference, and not just that, but I believe he landed like a 3-punch combination as well in that round. So I think like the leg kicks, I think went unnoticed, not only by the broadcast team, but I think in general by a lot of people. And I think that's where that was the difference in a lot of cases. But we'll see. Like I thought 4 and 5 were clearly Volkanovski's, but you made some good point, Richard.
Yeah.
Like absolutely, that's why I'm glad we're discussing this.
So not be so biased, he did also get a beautiful takedown in round 4. He had like the double under grip.
Yeah.
He pulls him close and then he steps behind the leg. It was really nice, but not huge damage was done from the ground. So
sure. Holloway also missed with a kick in that round too. You remember that?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
I'm trying to remember.
Second round that was, wasn't it?
Yeah,
second round. Yeah. Do you know? The more we talk about it, I wonder whether I second guess my notes as we're going along. But you know, that's why I had written down earlier on was that I had it for Holloway. Round 4, round 5, I had for Volkanovski. He showed a great deal of urgency in that 5th round. He was looking for takedowns. He was looking. He hit him with a couple of really nice uppercuts in the middle of the round. And I tell you what, Max Holloway's got a chin and a half on him. There was who stood out today for just taking some really clean shots. Holloway took a couple of really clean shots. Rose, the main event in Masvidal, which we'll talk about in a minute, took some shots and just didn't even flinch. And I was very impressed in the ability to just not even take a backward step, let alone get knocked out. James, you said you gave that 5th round to Volkanovski. What stood out for you about Volkanovski's 5th round?
Again, just the pressure, the fact that I believe he got a takedown like right at the end. Did he not? He was on top, or at least he was close to doing that there. Stuff like that really stands out to me in that round. Like I'm curious to hear your scorecards, but I thought Volkanovski clearly won that 5th. I just remember coming away with that being like, oh yeah, he won the 5th, he won the 4th, 3rd could have been close, but I thought Volkanovski took it. But again, I knew it was close, so I was like, when they were announcing the scorecards, I was like, they could say either one. I'm not going to have an issue with it. It was a close fight, in my opinion. That's how I sort of looked at it.
So I had the final score. I gave that last one to Volkanovski. I scored it at 48-47 to Holloway, basically. So I gave Volkanovski 5 and 3, and then the other 3 to Holloway. Richard, what did you make of the 5th round, and which rounds did you give to who altogether?
Round 5 is the one round that I can confidently say that Volkanovski won. And like I said, he was more urgent this round, so more aggressive. Like I felt like throughout the fight, neither was trying. Like I know, this happens a lot in title fights where they're not really trying to finish each other, and I think a lot of that is like, oh, we could be in here for 25 minutes, so I don't want to be exhausted in round 4 and be a sitting duck. So, but this one, he was a lot more urgent. Max Holloway instigates the takedown at the end of the round, but Volkanovski reverses it, and so it was really good. I'll give that one to Volkanovski clearly. So I'll give rounds 1 to 4 to Max, and 5th round to Volkanovski.
So you really thought that. So you would be in. So would you be in the boat of these people who are saying that it was a bit of a robbery then?
Yes, yeah, and I don't want to say robbery because it's almost like disrespectful to Volkanovski because he's done such a great job. But I'm confident Max won, and I just think he looked more in control for most of the fight. Round 1, I think that's the round where he drops him with the head kick, so that's a high-scoring round. But yeah, it's hard. It was competitive every second of the fight, but Max was in control.
Interesting. So, just out of interest, Richard, who did you think won the first fight?
Volkanovski, 100%. Because I know some people, Max felt like he won that, but
yeah, I didn't. I couldn't see that myself.
No way, man. Yeah, I was gonna say there's no. I was at that fight in Vegas, and I remember thinking like, wow, Volkanovski really like had the answer for, and that's why I picked Volkanovski heading into this fight, because I was like, I don't think Max is gonna be able to adjust in time to get this fight, but he surprised me. Yeah,
he's been training on Zoom.
I mean that who knows if that's that could be gamesmanship, right?
Yeah. Volkanovski said he come at him almost with an excuse as to why he was gonna lose when he talked about the whole Zoom class thing.
He basically said he hadn't been sparring. Was pretty much what he had said. But like James said, you don't know how true that is, because fighters have got
because he doesn't have to accept if he can't train properly. He doesn't have to take the fight, accept the fight, and it's a world title fight. It's like people are lucky to have 1, 2, 3 world title fights in their lifetime. So you don't throw it away like that and think, oh, I've not been training properly, but all right. He's guaranteed the fight, and he could say, it's lockdown, quarantine going on. I'm going to have to wait. So, yeah, I do think there was a bit of a get-out clause from him, perhaps.
Yeah,
but he looked great, so it didn't matter.
Yeah. So, James, you had this for Volkanovski, I believe, wasn't it, altogether? The official result was Volkanovski defeated Max Holloway by split decision, 48-47, 47-48, 48-47. Look, like I said, I had it at 48-47 to Holloway. I don't think it was a terrible decision or a robbery or anything like that, however. But then it's interesting, isn't it? We all had different opinions of it. And Richard had Holloway as 4 rounds to 1, and so it's interesting how people can see it in different ways, I guess. So just before we talk the main event, Alan Jones, big supporter of the show and channel, he said, "Evening guys, how do you think the Welsh lads will do in the Fight Island show this week?" So you've got on Wednesday we have Jack Shaw fighting Aaron Phillips.
Yeah, Aaron Phillips, newcomer.
And also we have John Phillips fighting Kazmat Chimaev. So we'll start with those two. Richard, do you want to go first?
Can you come to me second? I've got it.
Yeah, you go on. You have a look then.
Topology in front of me. I'm going to quick look.
So James, Jack Shaw versus Aaron Phillips.
I think this is an interesting fight because John Phillips, I should say, has way more experience than Chimaev as far as because I think Jack Phillips is actually, or John, I don't know why I keep saying Jack, because I'm thinking of Jack Shore, that's why. Yeah. John Phillips is like a 2-1 underdog right now. I was looking at the betting lines, and he has way more experience. And I get it. I mean, Phillips has been a bit of a disappointment. He had 3 straight losses, and then he got the last win over Amandovsky, but he's fighting a guy who only has 6 fights. Like, I know he's undefeated and he's younger, and the upside should definitely be on the the newcomer. He actually trains at a Team Nogueira. Not Team Nogueira, All Stars Training Center. Sorry, this guy fought in Brave. That's sort of what it was. But yeah, I think Phillips definitely has a good shot because he just has way more fights. Like, we've seen this so many times. Like, we had this a couple weeks ago with Brianna Van Buren taking on Tisha Torres, where it's like everyone's counting Torres out because she's on a losing streak. We got to look at who she's losing to, right? So that I think could be the same case here. I think John Phillips is someone to keep an eye on. And then on the Jack Shore and Aaron Phillips fight, Jack Shore is probably going to win this fight, but Aaron Phillips, interesting thing here. He actually fought in the UFC before. He lost 2 of his fights in 2014 to Sam Cecilia and Matt Hobar. Picked up a bunch of wins on the regional scene, had a nice winning streak heading into this one, but he's battle tested. He's a guy that's fought good competition, and he's really got nothing to lose here. He's not the guy coming into this with an undefeated record and has a lot to prove, right? So that's a dangerous thing for any fighter, especially with the short notice switch up like he's going to be dealing with. So I believe Jack Shore is one of the biggest. Actually, I'm just going to look right here. Jack Shore is right now a -650 favorite. He is the biggest betting favorite on this card, and I get it, trust me. But when you're fighting a guy who's got nothing to lose, it's a very dangerous thing. So I think most likely Shore and I don't know if I can pick Phillips though, but he does have a lot of experience. You know what? I will pick Phillips. I'm going to go Phillips and Shore. Welsh is going to take the night.
Dominate. So when I had when me and Danny had Jack on a few weeks back, we asked him about whether the undefeated streak adds to the pressure. Obviously, he's made the move up from Cage Warriors champion to the UFC. He made a real impressive UFC debut. He's very, very highly rated. His all-round game, his wrestling, his grappling, his striking, everything on paper is very, very good. So we asked him, is the undefeated streak, an extra burden, an extra pressure. And Jack, I don't know if you've ever interviewed him, James, or are familiar with his interviews. He's very laid back, he's very calm, and he said it kind of adds to the excitement, and he just doesn't really think about the undefeated streak too much. For me, his original opponent, I felt like Jack Shaw was going to, for lack of a better term, starch him in probably the first round. I think Aaron Phillips may give him a bit more trouble, but I still expect him to win. But I do think that the change of opponent has made it harder for Jack Shaw. John Phillips, I was kind of like, and then now you've told me that he's 2-1. I'm kind of like, oh, okay. I think I would probably take 2-1 on John Phillips to beat, just on experience, like you mentioned. Richard, are you good to go, or shall I? Because I can move on to Brett Johns otherwise.
For that one, I'm going to go with Jack Shaw. I think he'll get the job done. I can't. It's not an educated guess because I'm unfamiliar with Aaron Phillips. I haven't watched him, but I just had a little look, and I feel like Jack's fighting a higher caliber opponent in the Cage Warrior days. So I know that his moves were calculated, but we'll look at Aaron Phillips when he's 8-3. He fights a Jeremy Rogers, who's 0 wins, 1 loss. Then following that, he fights Anthony Rettig, who's 6 wins, 7 losses. So guys proven to lose quite a bit. I'm not dissing him at all here. We play with our healths in this game. So, but I feel like Jack Shaw has proven himself more capable against higher caliber opponents.
Yes.
I see that Aaron Phillips has quite a few KOs, and Jack Shaw is very tasty with his boxing. So
yes, he is indeed.
Quite confident, Jack, because I rate him, but I don't know who Aaron is.
Well, I interviewed him last week, guys. Go check it out on Odds HQ on their YouTube channel. I actually posted it the other day. If you guys want to watch my interview with Aaron, a lot of good insight into the camp he had too, because he was a guy that sort of expected to fight soon. He was actually going to fight for Titan FC for their bantamweight title, so he was already getting ready for a fight. He was already in camp, already putting in the work. So people he even says it numerous times in the interview. He's like, I'm not just coming off the couch. Like I was ready to fight. So it's not like for people looking at this as like, oh, like he's not in shape or whatever. It's not the case with Aaron Phillips. But I agree, Jack Shaw will probably win.
He looks like a really fit lad on the picture I can see here, but be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. Do you think John Phillips will get the victory, Richard?
1 moment, just going to have a quick look at John. So he's fighting Kamzat Chimaev.
Yeah, that's
Brave,
it.
I think John Phillips is going to get the win because he's 22-9, 6-0. So 6-0 is his opponent, so he's never been beaten. But that's achievable, 6-fight win streak. But 22 fights, 22 wins and 9 losses. That's a hell of a lot of experience, and I think the experience will carry him through.
Yes, yeah, and then finally, actually on Wednesday, I'll ask you both just while we're on it because I was going to ask you at the end of the show. We have Molly McCann is also fighting. She's on the main card actually. She is fighting Talia Santos. How do you think she'll get on, Richard?
Just having a look at Santos now.
Okay, James, do you know where? Are you familiar with Santos?
Yeah, I previewed this card last week on my channel because of the 2 cards this week. So I am picking Molly McCann in this fight. I think she's riding a lot of momentum over the last couple of fights. She had that rough UFC debut against Jillian Robertson where she got submitted in the 2nd round. But I think since then she's sort of found the form that we saw in Cage Warriors, where she was really just looking impressive. And I think she'll do so here. I know she's fighting a tough opponent in Santos, who's 15-1, but McCann's a gamer. I mean, you can't put her away. She's very tough, and I see her coming out with the decision in that one.
Yeah,
got my answer
I
now.
think so. Go on in, go for it.
I'm quite confidently going to say McCann, possibly by knockout, ground and pound. It'll be a stoppage, I think.
Yeah, Molly McCann's got a very good. She's got a chin, and she's very durable as well as being very talented. So I think it would take a lot to stop her. And then finally, before we do the main event, on Saturday we have Brett Johns, who is fighting
Montel Jackson.
There we go, Montel Jackson, who I'm sure you're quite familiar with, James, or at least more familiar than
No,
us.
I'm familiar with both actually, because Brett Johns used to fight in Titan FC. I used to interview a lot of their fighters a few years ago. So Brett was actually the first Titan FC bantamweight champion. So Brett's a guy that unfortunately ran into some tough competition. I think he's coming into this one off back-to-back losses, or at least
he won his last one.
Fight. Sorry, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
My
he's
mistake.
very impressive actually.
But he's fighting a guy in Montel Jackson who is huge for this division. Let me just find his stats here. Montel Jackson is 5'10" with a 75.5 inch reach. Brett Johns is 5'7" with a 70-inch reach, and that's how Jackson has mainly won his fights, just using his height and reach. It's a tough one though, because Johns, I think, actually on paper is probably the better fighter, but how is he going to be able to deal with that height and reach of Montel Jackson? It's a tough one. I would almost give, like, the other thing with Montel Jackson is that he's improving every fight. He's actually a year older. Actually, they're both the same age. They're both 28 years old. So it's really tough to say. And Jackson's been a little bit more active. I know Johns had a bit of a layoff. I believe he was heading into the last fight, or I remember it was he missed all of I think it was from 2016 to 2017. I remember he missed a lot there. But he's come back a bit. Actually, sorry, he didn't fight at all last year. That's what I was trying to say. And he fought this year, so that's where we're coming off from that. But we'll see. Might give a slight edge to Montel Jackson, but we'll see. I mean, Brett Johns, like I said, I think he's better on paper.
How is Montel Jackson on the floor, James? Or in the
very
grappling?
good, very good. He actually
very good,
if you remember, he submitted Brian Kelleher in the first round back at UFC 232 in December of 2018, and that's Kelleher's been submitted before, but to do so quickly, very, very, very impressive. So Jackson's going to be a problem for a lot of fighters in the division just with his build. Yeah,
for sure. I can't go against the Welshman. I'm gonna go with Brett. I felt like his comeback fight. I forget the gentleman's name before. It was the guy's UFC debut. He's really, really good wrestler, and but Brett was very impressive. So he looked back to his original self. And Brett, people sometimes forget as well, is Brett fought a really high level caliber of opponents, and he did very well. One of which was Aljamain Sterling. And if you look at the guys that he fought, Pedro Munez, these guys are at the top of the divisions now. So, I'm going to go with Brett Johns for that one. What about you, Richard?
Yeah, I'm going to say Brett Johns as well. Has got a very solid record, 16 wins, 2 losses. Them 2 losses are to outstanding competition, and then since then seems to have learned from his mistakes. And so I just, based on experience, perhaps, Brett Johns. But like I said, it's another quite uneducated guess coming from me. So I'll be interested to see it.
Yeah, I think, like James said, it's going to be it might depend on how Brett can, really deal with Montel Jackson's frame and build, because he's a big boy. Okay, and the main event of the evening was the UFC welterweight championship. Kamaru Usman, the champion, versus number 3 George Masvidal, took the fight on 6 days' notice. Which I think he deserves tremendous credit for that, because without him this fight fell through. I was really looking forward to Usman versus Gilbert Burns. I have to say, I was really, really looking forward to it, but I wasn't disappointed when this was announced as the replacement. I was a little disappointed with how it was from spectacle, only a little bit. I still was, I still enjoyed it. I still thought it was very good. So I gave the first round to Masvidal. James, how did you see the first round?
Yeah, it was Masvidal. Yeah, he came out looking pretty good. He was able to land his strikes and everything like that, and that's sort of what we expected here, because obviously Usman probably saw that Ben Askren fight, and he's like, I'm not going to go for a takedown within the first 5 seconds. So Masvidal just, again, he outstruck Usman in that first round. But I mean, we'll talk about the rest of the fight, but it was all Usman basically after that. I mean, Masvidal had that one round, but yeah, it was a pretty predictable fight. I think even from the get-go, as much as people love Masvidal, you knew it wasn't a good style matchup for him.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I'm not sure if it was in the build-up to this fight or if it was an old quote which got kind of recycled this week. But basically, Usman said, I will wrestle if I need to wrestle, and I will strike if I need to strike. I will do whatever I need to do to win. And sometimes people criticize Usman for his kind of fighting style, but ultimately, I'm sure he'd rather win fights and maybe not them be that exciting and be a champion of the world than be the most exciting fighter in the world but not be the champion. I enjoy Usman's fights. As I enjoy all aspects of it. I enjoy a bit of the grappling. You know, you can get some fights which are not enjoyable when they just go to the floor and then they just kind of don't move positions and they don't go for submissions and things like that. But you know, I thought this fight was pretty good. I thought the first round Masvidal took it, his striking. Richard, how did you see the first round? Did you also give it to Masvidal?
Yep. First round also Masvidal. So he opens up with like 5 power kicks in a row, just bam, bam, really heavy kicks, and then on the last one, Usman catches it on the inside, gets him down, but because of the aggression, it's Masvidal. With this fight, I feel like, you know, Masvidal's taking it on short notice, so he kind of knows he's got to finish this fight in the same sort of style that we've seen in his last 3 outings, aggressive. Do you know what I mean? And whereas Usman is going for a 5-round strategy. So he spent after that round, when he knows Masvidal's going to be most dangerous, he spent a lot of time leaning on him just to like wear him out, pin him on the fence, and fatigue him. So it becomes, the more fatigued he gets, the less dangerous he gets. Takes away all that explosive power. So round 1, 100% Masvidal. Rounds 2 to 5 is all the same, really.
Yeah, I think Usman won every single round. So rather than kind of going through each round with this now, what I will ask you both is, I'll just kind of ask you to point out anything which really stuck out for you from each round. James, from that second round, was there anything which kind of really stuck out for you for either guy?
I just think the pressure of Usman, the conditioning, I mean, it was on point. I mean, Masvidal was smiling and kind of taunting Usman throughout the fight, but Usman was landing. Usman was doing what he had. What I was actually impressed with Usman in this fight was he could have just wrestled the entire fight, but he didn't. He threw in some strikes as well. I give him some credit. Not the most exciting fight in the world. A lot of people misconstrued that when I said that in my recap, thinking that I was implying the fight was boring. It wasn't boring, but it wasn't the best fight either. The Colby and Usman fight was a lot more entertaining, but that was just pure striking. But this fight, I do give Usman some credit because he didn't have to strike with Masvidal. He could have just tried to out wrestle him and use that. But I mean, that was sort of the big thing for me, was that I think Usman showed a well-rounded game, and he's going to likely, well, it sounds like he's fighting Gilbert Burns next, which should be a very intriguing fight.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think Gilbert Burns will take that?
That's interesting because they do train together. Well, they used to, anyways. Usman's now training with Justin Gaethje up at Elevation Fight Team. But yeah, I think because Burns is so good on the ground. Like, that's one of the things we forget about, because he's been knocking opponents out, that he's like a high-level jiu-jitsu guy. So even if Usman's able to take him down with his wrestling, Burns is very dangerous off his back. So that's where things get interesting. And I'd almost argue that Burns has probably more power than Usman does. Like, if you just see some of the knockouts, like Usman, like he finished Colby, but it was later in the fight. Like, he's not known as a power puncher. I would say Gilbert Burns, with him knocking out Maya and him, having some other knockouts as well, I think really shows that he does have that. So I think I'd probably still slightly favor Usman, just because I think he's a little bit more well-rounded. But Burns, he like I said, Burns is so good on the ground and has such good knockout power that I don't know. I'm almost tempted to pick Burns, but I feel like I can't.
Yeah, I feel almost the same way. Richard, was there anything particularly which stuck out for you from those sort of middle rounds 2, 3, 4?
Nothing that really stood out, but I think it was a good fight still. It wasn't the most exciting, but I enjoy watching strategy, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Which a lot of casual fans don't necessarily, because they might not understand the strategy. So yeah, he was holding him against the fence and kind of just keeping him there. But I could see that it was more that he wanted to do that because he knows Masvidal's not going to have the gas tank to be so dangerous in the later rounds. But he did actually look still quite dangerous. But yeah, it was good. It was more just he was playing a 5-round fight, So if he's leaning on the fence and Masvidal's got his back to his fence, Masvidal's the one that's spending more energy. So it was good. Nice strategy applied. Wasn't the most exciting fight, but it was a good performance from Usman. A good effort from Masvidal. When they break and they're out in the open, I feel like Masvidal is the more dangerous. He's throwing some nice kicks. But I think after round 1, the chance of him getting the flash knockout again wasn't quite as likely.
Yeah. So here's a question for you both. So Usman defeated Jorge Masvidal by unanimous decision, 50-45, 50-45, 49-46. James, I'll ask you first. Do you think that with a full fight camp, Masvidal would have more of a chance of beating Usman, or do you think it would probably go the same way?
It would go the same way. I think stylistically it was not a good match. Like, you can't teach that much wrestling within that period of time. Like, Masvidal's always had issues with the wrestling and the pace and everything. I mean, it would have been a little bit closer, but I don't think there was a way that Masvidal was going to win. Like, there were people, because again, people get so caught up in past fights and they don't look at the style matchup. Like, there were people who I saw in my timeline saying Masvidal's going to knock out Usman in the first round. Really? Because I don't remember Kamaru Usman ever being knocked out in the UFC, right? Like, this is you got to look at the style matchup. Like, Masvidal has some good wins, but you really have to look at the context of those wins, and I just don't think he was ever going to go out there and get like a quick like power finish. You know, Masvidal's not Justin Gaethje, right? Like, there's a difference in the style matchup, so I don't think it would have made a difference in terms of the outcome. But look, Masvidal's going to be fine. He lost this fight. It doesn't matter. He has double-digit losses anyways. People want to see him fight. He can fight Colby. He can fight whoever. People are going to tune in to watch, and he'll always have that with the success he had last year, becoming a superstar for the UFC.
Yeah. He had quite the comeback, and he's not going to be struggling for the big fights, I think. And he would have been paid handsomely for this, stepping in at the last minute to fight on Fight Island. Jorge Masvidal would have had a nice paycheck for this, I'd imagine. Richard, do you think with a full fight camp, Masvidal would do any better?
Definitely got a better chance. Definitely. But I would still if I had to put money on it, I'd still put my money on Usman, because it's quite obvious it's a typical striker versus grappler setup going on, and often the grappler does win. They pressure and just smother the striking. So if they fight again, then he's got to work down his Masvidal needs to work his counter wrestling and footwork, so he can keep the game at range, because that's where he's dangerous. And you know, he could knock him out, but if I'm putting money on it, I'm putting money on Usman to do the same thing again.
Yeah, I think so. And just to finish us off, I'm just going to talk through the bonuses. So Rose Namajunas and Jessica Andrade, I think, had the fight of the night. And then performance of the night went to the name which I can't pronounce, Jiri Prohaska,
I think. Yeah.
Prohaska. I'm glad you're here, James, just to let me know. Defeated Ozdemir in sensational performance, and then was there one more? And also Davy Grant had a performance of the night bonus, which I'm really happy for him to get that 50 Gs, as it were, because his very impressive performance all around. And there we are, guys. I thank you all for tuning in. We got a sensational week coming up on Ace Podcast Nation. Tomorrow night we got the Andy Campbell Football Show. Joining myself and Andy, we have former England and Liverpool striker Mr Emil Heskey. Wednesday we have our cricket series, The State of Play, dropping with myself and West Indian batsman Kieran Powell, joined by West Indian fast bowler Mr Miguel Cummins, which was a real fun chat. And then Thursday night we have another live Danny Batten Fight Show without Danny Batten, and this on Thursday I will be joined by Cage Warriors' hottest prospect, Welshman Mr Oban Elliott, which I'm looking forward to, because he's going to be discussing obviously his training partners in Jack Shaw and the Brett Johns fight on the Saturday, and we'll be having a good chat. So we'll be live Thursday 8 o'clock, Friday again then the Andy Campbell Championship Show live 7 o'clock, and then we finish the week on Sunday evening with my story. I think it's episode number 6 with former England captain Mr Adam Hollyoak. So I'm very much looking forward to this week. Got some great guests coming up, and yes, James, tell the people your YouTube channel address, your social medias, and where they can find your fantastic work.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on. It was great chatting with both of you. It was really love getting to talk about different stuff, and we definitely disagreed on some stuff, which is great because I love that. It always makes me a little bit better here and there. Your audience can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. That's LYNCH. And same thing on YouTube, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. That's where you'll find all my content. I work for a bunch of different outlets, but I always put my interviews and playlists on my channel, so you won't miss any of them. And thanks so much for having me on, guys.
James, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, and if you're at a loose end on Thursday and you want to jump on with me and Oban, you're always welcome. And Richard, thank you, my friend. Thank you for coming back on.
You. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And James, it's a pleasure to meet you. And,
you as well.
I'll check out your podcast and that.
Yeah, so, let me know what you think. I get a fighter's perspective on this, so that'll be good.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a good one. And then next time you can talk about Danny Battens' corner skills, can't you?
Yeah, well, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to ask you actually, because I've already asked Richard this, but I'll ask you, James. I don't know how familiar you are with Modestas Bukaskash.
A little bit, yeah.
UFC debut Wednesday.
Yeah, no, very well. I haven't watched a ton of his stuff, but I know he was with Cage Warriors. He was an outstanding guy. So his management company is actually based in the U.S. So he's a guy I've seen talked about for a while. If I remember correctly, he actually got signed to the UFC a while ago, and now he's just making his debut. So I've heard a lot of hype. I'm excited to watch him fight. Like I said, I've never had the opportunity to interview him just yet, but I'm sure I will in the future.
Yes. I'm hoping that he can show what he can do, Richard, isn't it? Because he can do some special stuff.
He's got what it takes to go all the way to the title, for sure. Because I train with him, and there's nothing in the way. He's super focused. Every day he's at the gym, it's focus, and he's made a lot of sacrifices. And I hang out with a lot of fighters, and I'm around them every day, and then you can just see who's 100% tunnel vision on the goal. So I don't know about his opponent because there's been a recent change. But Mo's going to get the win, and I do think we'll see him fight for the title in time. Yeah, for
sure. And also, I will add to both of you is I've had him on. We had him on a Danny Battens show, and I also had him on an episode of Unscripted and Uncensored. And he is an absolutely lovely gentleman as well, a top guy. And we message back and forth now and again. He's just a nice bloke, I got to say. But anyway, James, Richard, thank you for joining me. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in throughout.
It's been a pleasure, guys. And
we will see you next week, or I'll see you tomorrow for the football show. Please join us because it's going to be a good one with Emil Heskey. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Nice. See you guys.
Welcome.